Hi, everyone. If you were paying attention to our last show, we were talking about what may come down the pipe, and we were talking about notes, right?
Yes, we were.
So we're going to take a deeper dive into notes with Fred Rewey right after this.
Crude oil.
Okay, once again, we're debating behind the scenes when our mics are supposedly muted, but we never really know.
Did Bill say pipe or pike? And Jonathan's response was,
well, if it was pipe, the answer is definitely not crude oil.
Thank you guys for joining us on our Active Income Passive Wealth show. I am Bill Fairman. This is Wendy Sweet. And this is Jonathan Davis, who loves crude oil. We are Carolina Capital Management. We are lenders in the Southeast. If you're a borrower and you're looking to get some information on borrowing in the Southeast, carolinahardmoney.com. Click on the Apply Now button. If you're an investor looking for passive returns, click on the button that says Accredited Investors. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, hit the bell, all that good stuff. By the way, on every show, we have a comment section either to the right of the screen or underneath, depending on the platform that you are viewing from. We always try to make these interactive, so don't hesitate to put your comments in there. If we like what you're saying, we'll bring it up. If not, we're going to ignore it.
That's not true. Normally.
So we have been advertising the Cash Flow Expo coming up.
And we're excited about it.
And we've been doing that for the past 2 weeks, I believe. Yeah. And guess who we have on the show? The master himself, the host of the Cash Flow Expo, Fred Rewey. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here. I've seen your show, by the way, which is interesting because I almost think Wendy has to start because, Bill, you never start without her laughing about something you said before the whole commercial thing runs. It's great. There's always controversy right out of the gate.
It is. It is. We like to keep people on the edge of their seats.
Well, by the way, I'm impressed that you've seen our shows and you're still willing to come on.
To be on it. Thank you. Thank you for that sacrifice.
I was told there'd be snacks, so I'm out of here, actually.
There are, but they're here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't have a very good rider for appearances anymore, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, our green room is virtual, and it's hard to stock it.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
My apologies. So, again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you bet.
How are things going with the Cash Flow Expo coming up?
Good. So this is the third year. It was the event that everybody told us not to do, that we really thought we were crazy for doing it. So we started 2 years ago, and that was really before like we all were purposefully shut in on Zoom. So I'd like to say that it was a foreshadowing or ahead of my time, but it was just that, the idea of a lot of people, even then when we were getting on planes, I'm like, could we create an event that people could go and see sessions, and would it look enough like a convention? And the only thing you really can't get out of is the networking. But, we go to conventions, you guys go to conventions, we've seen each other at conventions, and we've seen a lot of the same speakers over and over again, and I watch them anyway. And usually, even if I've seen them a lot, I still have takeaways. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. That's a really good strategy. Or that reminds me of something else. So when you go to these events, even if you've been like Tracy and I, we're combined 50 plus years of doing notes. So we've done this a long time, but you always get some sort of idea. So the idea was, could we do this online? Could we actually get people to present online, create an event? And then we got everybody said, well, that's crazy. No one's going to watch educational stuff on online, which hello, 2020, 2021. But basically, speakers aren't going to want to do it. You're crazy for not charging for it, because we made the entire event free. So the way we did it is we said that you could come to all 3 days. So the first year we had 21 speakers, and it went over 3 days. Each speaker gets about an hour. They usually come in 45 to 55 minutes. It's free to watch that speaker. It is for 48 hours. That's live. And then if you want and you don't want to sit through all 3 days, you can actually register for VIP, which right now is still under $100, gives you copies of all the recordings, all the slides. We hire a note taker to take notes for you and timestamp the notes. It's like paying $3 a session if you want to do that, but you don't have to. You can watch the whole thing free. And the other stipulation that everybody said we were kind of crazy about was that we were adamant to the speakers that we didn't want this to be a pitch fest. And we've all been to conventions. I don't care your background. We've all been to conventions where you get 15 minutes of really good content from the speaker, and then you get another 45 minutes of them trying to sell you something where they're putting, for $29.95, and then, oh, well, you're not going to pay that, and here's all these bullets and stuff like that. And we didn't want anybody to sell. We didn't want anybody to sell. We think that we're dealing with people that are sophisticated enough that if you just tell me what it is, tell me about your industry, I can self-identify whether that's something I want to pursue or not. And it worked. The first year we had over 1,500 people, 21 speakers. Last year we had over 2,500 attendees, and we had about the same number of speakers. We had a few extra speakers. This year was a little different. So we're tracking for over 3,000 attendees, which I expected. Wow. But we had more sessions to where I literally had to turn down speakers. And it was kind of nice getting into the third year because the reputation was out. So some people that had been on the sidelines. So I'd say of the 25 speakers, I think 11 of them are new. And I would say about 5 or 6 of them are pretty heavy hitters that have stayed on the sideline. Like you guys were right out of the gate embracing it, which was great. And I appreciate that. But some of these people are just, they're either in demand or their ego is not going to take a chance on something new. And now they're like, hey, wait a minute, we want in. I'm like, well, you should have been there helping me make the bread. But we've got some really, really good names. And we had Jeff Woods from The One Thing that he actually did a whole session, and he's impossible to get. And then we have another one we're announcing next week that I'm supposed to record tomorrow. And I'm not going to jinx myself until I get the recording in the bag tomorrow, but you guys know who it is. And that's another big one. Yeah, I'm super excited about this one. So it's kind of a neat event to do that people can see and learn. And although it's heavy real estate related, because that's our wheelhouse is notes, and we could talk about that, and your wheelhouse lending, and everybody's kind of got that. It's heavy that there's a lot of other things. We have Laura Icken, who does options, and she's a great stock and options trader and how to do it safely and smartly. There's other people. Mark Ruda is doing one on business notes. Maybe you want to get into business notes. Definitely, him and his father are definitely the experts in that. So there's other different fields to look at. So if you're looking for something specific, you're going to find great information and just gravitate towards those speakers. If you're just taking a broad stroke and go, hey, I don't even know what I'm interested in or what I want to gravitate towards, you get to do that, and it's all free. Like I said, the live sessions are all free for 48 hours to watch them. It's kind of a trailing 48 hours. So you watch them. And like I said, for $97 right now, you can go and get the P, and then you have a membership for them for life. So whatever you want to do. But it was an event. Like I said, everybody said, don't do it. It's crazy. It's too many people. And we've been thrilled because it's kind of a labor of love. It's crazy chasing down all the speakers for, hey, I didn't get your PowerPoints, or send me a picture or whatever. But it's been fun. It's been fun. And we're almost there. We're 2 weeks away. We're getting close.
And that's what I love so much about this event that you're doing, is that you have such a wide variety of people that are going to be on here. And it's, if you're even a little bit interested in investing your money, whether you want it to be active or passive or whatever, you've got so many options to choose from. It's amazing. There's no way that somebody can get on this and not learn something from every single person they watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's an area you don't think that you're interested in, you come up with a takeaway to how to modify. I'm sure for you guys, it's the same way on lending. Same thing as I on notes is I'll watch somebody on lending. I don't lend money. I buy payments. So when I'm looking at that, but I'm like, well, that's a pretty good strategy. I could twist that into my side and do something with it. So we do a lot of that. But yeah, and then we have just neutral ones that are like, if you don't have a self-directed IRA, or you're not aware about self-directed IRAs, there's 2 different sessions on that. We have 2 different attorneys on some other stuff. Everybody, I don't care what you're working on, everybody should be watching those sessions as well.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. 100%.
There's a lot of people that do not realize that you can do options in real estate as well. And maybe in another event next year, we can have real estate options specialists talk about that.
Yeah.
And
there's so many
Especially
strategies.
using your IRA.
yeah,
That's
a great use for your IRA, especially if you have a small dollar IRA.
Well, yeah, or a self-directed HSA, which becomes the no money going in and no tax consequence going in and no tax consequence coming out. It's probably the biggest big one there. But yeah, there's so much you can do, and I think so many people don't realize how much is available to them. Even if you're a conservative investor, like Lori talks about options. Right now, options are scary things to most people, and they can be dangerous. I mean, it's definitely a strategy that's very, very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But there are some ways that you could be a conservative investor with a portfolio and go, wait a minute, she calls it renting out her stocks, which is great. She sells options against stocks she owns, and it's a great strategy. And I've done it, and it's also the only thing you can do out of an IRA, a self-directed IRA, when it comes to selling options. But it's a great way to boost up that, even if you're a conservative investor. And same thing with lending, same thing with buying notes. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be all high risk. It's not, not everything is non-performing seconds on an oil field somewhere. I mean, it's just, I mean, you can be conservative. And right now, I mean, and our side on notes right now. So like if I wanted to invest my money in a note, and I was just ultra conservative. Like I wanted to sleep at night. I didn't worry about a thing. As a background, buying notes, for those that maybe aren't familiar with it, is I'm looking for an existing loan on a property already. It's typically been a seller carryback financing. So if you ever see a sign there that says owner will carry or owner will finance, typically that's a situation where they avoided the bank. And the buyer is making payments directly to the seller. And what happens usually at some point is that seller, instead of getting the $800 a month or whatever they're getting, they'd like to sell their whole note. And that's where I come in and I try to buy that note, and I buy it at a discount. So if I was to buy something like that and I was super, super conservative, if you'll say, oh, I wouldn't want to own that. Well, let me ask you this. If you're owed $50,000 and they're paying you monthly and they owe you $50,000, and if they don't pay you, what you get is a $150,000 property. How comfortable how good are you sleeping now tonight? And you're like, well, yeah, I'd be sleeping great. Well, what if I told you you're going to get like 8% on that? Now, 8% is not a high return by some of our standards of what we look for, but I'm talking about a really concerned, sleep well at night. It's an A buyer. It's plenty of equity. 8%. I don't know. You decide how much you want to make, but I know if I walk down to the bank right now, I'm pretty sure they're not giving me 8%. Not happening.
Yeah. We preach about that all the time.
Yeah.
Is that you can chase yield if you like, but you tend to lose more than you think you do if you're chasing yield. How much extra work do you have to do if you're chasing yield? Are there gaps between those short-term deals that you're doing when you're chasing yield, and in the long run, your annualized return is actually 8 to 9% anyway?
And then what's the assumed risk, higher risk level for the chasing of the yield?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being risky. You just have to do it with a smaller percentage of your portfolio. And then as you get older, that percentage gets smaller and smaller too. Right?
I think that's two really good points. Walt Poser had taught me, the yield or return, getting a better yield or return doesn't make the deal better. Like if you didn't like the deal at 15%, just because someone bumps it up to 20 doesn't make it a better deal. I mean, because, the return on not getting paid is still zero. I think that and that's something. And then you made a really good point though, and I want to know if this is where you're going, because I've been preaching this all along. And if it wasn't where you're going, then just say it was. But I see a lot of people that have money to invest, and let's just say in their mind they want 14%. I'm just making up a number off the top of my head. And they will literally pass over deals over and over and over that are like 12% or 11%. Because like, nope, 14% is my number. It's not worth my time unless I invested at 14%. Meanwhile, they've left all this money sitting in the bank doing absolutely nothing because they were so yield obsessed, as opposed to, look, the money has to be working. And that's one of the things that we talk about when we calculate is that, look, you can buy a payment stream, but the second that payments come in, the clock has stopped. That's why we have to reinvest our money. I mean, we got paid on, if you buy 360 payments, it's like 360 mini loans, if you will. And every time when you collect that one loan, you've been paid in full on what your 14%. but now you got to get the money back out there. But I don't know if that's where you're going, but I see people not invest because they're so glued on a number that when they don't hit it, they'll just ignore all the other stuff on the way there.
Well, that was where you were going. So
Yeah.
good job.
So, you know, in our particular business, we'll have individual notes that pay a much higher rate than, say, our fund does. But, you know, they pay off. There's a gap between the time you get it paid off and you get it reinvested. And then when you average it all back in, you're really basically better off in a fund of some sort or a longer term note where you don't have to continuously work to get it reinvested. And then when you do have those gaps, your annualized return is actually a lot lower. Just like you said, you're missing out and you're doing a heck of a lot more work, and you're kind of nervous because you got this money not working and you need to get it placed. And if you start getting too nervous, are you going to place it in something that you're putting it in that you wouldn't have made that decision otherwise?
Yeah,
So you take more risk.
I met Walter Poser on a Financial Friends cruise.
Yeah.
Great
Okay.
guy, good heart.
Really good guy. Really good guy.
Yeah, he really, really is. So tell us, I mean, I'm curious, have you and Tracy always been in the note business? How did you even get started in this?
Yeah. So for myself, I was living in California. I was had worked in restaurants and stuff, and I was taking night classes. And I just stumbled on a night class where I was trying to learn to buy real estate. And I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and real estate is crazy now, but it was also crazy then too, as well, just not as high a number, but it was all equally unaffordable. And so I took this class at night. And a gentleman by the name of John Richards, who a lot of people in the note industry know, was teaching this class at the college. And so I learned about notes, and it was predominantly a real estate class. And in 1 week, he taught us the financial calculator. And I was hooked. I thought this was the coolest thing ever. Now understand that I don't like math, but I do like money. So there was a bridge here to me understanding, math. So I followed him around like a puppy dog for like a week. He says, well, I'm going over here to do, teach something. I'm going over here. So I was following him around, and he ended up teaching me the industry and said, look, I'm really busy. Can you handle these deals? And I did that for a while. And then I ended up working for the largest broker in the country for a while. And then I thought, well, okay, I've done it for my, 500 square foot apartment. I've been the lead buyer for a brokerage that was the #1 brokerage in the country. And so I don't know the investor side. So literally at one point, these people came through our offices and they were the largest buyer in the country. And I just kind of gave the guy my card and said, hey, we're looking for somebody, on the institutional side, let me know. And they called me up about, 2 weeks later and said, well, here's what we'd like. So I went up there. That's where I met Tracy. Tracy'd been doing it since she was in a small town working for attorneys. Doing that kind of thing. So we've done it ever since. So we, from a very early age, for me, it would have been 26, I think, 27 when I started. Tracy was even earlier. So we've done it for a long time. So we're, like I said, we're actually close to 60 years combined in it and stuff like that. So this is what we've done. We've created, eventually we created trainings and to help people out along the way. And we created, our membership, which we open twice a year. But we created noteinvestor.com, which was a place to just put free articles out there. I don't like selling. Like I said, we have a membership. We only open it up twice a year. If you want to join the membership, great. If you don't, I don't care. I'm not going to convince you of anything. When people contact us and they want to learn the note industry, we send them to Note Invest and go, look, there's over 300 articles we've already written for free. Go read all those and then tell me if you're interested in the industry and we can talk about there. So we just love it though. I mean, the idea, it's very creative. I don't think people realize, and it's the same thing on your side. I don't think people realize how creative you can be. It's not just like you're punching, it's not like you work for a bank and everything's got to fit in this box and you push it through. I mean, we get very creative. I mean, I've had notes where, I'm trying to solve their problem. They no one sells a note because they just feel like selling a note. They sell a note because they're trying to fill some sort of need. They have a need or a want or, something. And so how you structure that note, whether I buy the whole note or I only buy a piece of that note, really is dictated by their needs. And I've had notes where, someone was just trying to get their kid in college every year. So I would buy 12 payments. every time in the fall, I would the next 12 payments, give them a lump sum of money. They could pay their kids' tuition. Then a year went by and I collected the payments. They got the note back, so there'll be another 12. And then when all 4 years were done, it's actually 5 years in this case because the kid was accelerated. But then they got the note back. My favorite one was to do an early payoff. Back when, you mentioned earlier about, that time between when you get money back. I used to want to get the notes to pay off because that was like, and I had all these creative ways to do it. And there are ways to do it and bump your yield. So my favorite time would be literally about 2 weeks ago would be, hey, I tell you what, so let's say I bought a $50,000 note and let's just say I bought it for $40,000. And let's say I bought it yesterday. I would call the payer and say, tell you what, if any time between now and Super Bowl, you can pay me off in full, I will call it, I'll call it good because you're paying it off. I'll buy you a big screen TV. Now, that was going to cost me, at the time, it was about $2,500 for a big screen TV. But if they pay off $50,000 minus the $2,500 that I had to kick in the big screen TV, but I turned $40,000 into this, 47.5 or whatever it is overnight, that's a big return. Mm-hmm. So to my point being is that it's as creative as you want to be. So.
Yeah, that's why we love the note space. Granted, we don't buy a lot of notes because we create new ones. But if you're going to be a real estate investor at any point, you need to understand notes. Yeah. Because it opens up a whole new world of just what you're saying, of being able to be creative with buying property, selling property. Not to mention once you've picked up the notes and being able to sell a stream of payments, getting someone to partner with you on a deal. There's all kind of different ways you can.
We sell notes all the time.
Yeah.
We constantly have notes for sale, but.
Randy has a question for you. He has signed up for the Expo and he was curious when you're going to have a schedule ready to release. I'm assuming about a week before.
It's about a week before. Yeah, we just make sure that we've got everything lined up. Sometimes we make a very few changes due to someone's session length time or something like that. So it's usually about a week in advance, but everybody registered will get it well in advance. And then every day, the night before, we send them, hey, here's going to be the links for the next day. Here's the lineup. Here's everything else like that that's going to be on there. So we do that too. You mentioned about creating notes. I mean, that's one of the last trainings we had created was talked about creating notes. How, if you have a property or you're flipping properties or like that, you can sell them outright for cash, but you can also sell them and carry back paper, sell off part of that paper, take your profit back out of it, keep a nice residual nest egg for yourself and move on to your next property. So just as lending as you're creating on your own paper, we've gravitated towards more of creating that. And we've used notes to buy property. We've used the idea of a note. We've purchased a property in Idaho a long time ago where it was on a lake, and we used the idea, said, hey, we want to buy this property. You're going to carry back a note, but we're going to turn around and buy that note back at closing. And so, there's a lot of creativity you can do in there. It's just a fun industry as far as concerned. And it's one of those ones that I want to say that, anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Or now I should say, as I was younger, if I could do it. I'm older and I hope smarter now, but there's no barrier of entry in this. You just got to learn what to do, and it's not like you're reinventing the wheel. It's Wendy. I saw when you were talking in one of the panels when you did Wise Women. I thought it was really interesting because I was curious how you guys were going to handle the question of being a woman and lending and any barriers associated with that. And bottom line is, if you're the one with money, they're going to talk to anybody because they need you. It's like I make the rules, and that's true. That's very true. Someone asked in the chat, are the notes long term or short term? It's up to you. It's just you can create or purchase whichever one you want. So we see notes that are 30 years long. We see notes that are maybe they were 30 years long and 20 years have already been paid on them, or it was a 15-year note and 7 years have already gone by. Usually we're not involved just by nature of luck. We're not there on day one. So usually some time has gone by, and we call it seasoning. How long have they've been making payments?
Yeah, and on the note creation side of things, it brings into play these smaller towns where the dollar values of the homes are much less. Most people don't want to mess with them because the prices are too low. But if you purchase a really inexpensive house and turn around and sell it to somebody for more money, you get profit on that. But then if you're carrying back the paper, you get even more profit from that. So in a situation where you may only have a $15,000 profit on the sale of a house, you get another $15,000 profit on the over the term of the note,
or bigger than
Yeah.
that. So when you're looking at buying notes, I'm curious as to what your answer is on. Do you care whether it's an owner occupied versus non-owner occupied? Do you care if it's been underwritten by an RMLO? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, right now the RMLO has become more important. It wasn't, but because of Dodd-Frank and thing, that has definitely become more of an issue. And if you don't, then you kind of run numbers to see if they would qualify at this point or how much seasoning's gone. We look at a lot of the same parameters when we're buying a note, but what's nice and what I think is, again, that creative side is how they can offset each other. I know that I probably don't have the best credit buyer. The purchaser of the home is probably the one paying on the note probably doesn't have the best credit. So now, what are my offsets? Have they been living there for a while and the property value's gone up? Or have they been living there for a while that they've established payments and now they've been paying for 24 months, so I feel like they're vested and want to be in that property? If there's poor credit, did they have a big down payment? Or if there was a small down payment, was there more seasoning? So we have all these little offsets. Interestingly enough, historically, I prefer owner occupied, but I can tell you historically, the numbers are not as much different from a default rate for either one as much as you would think. Certainly different by areas. And you bring up a really good point when you start talking about smaller dollar properties. Lonnie Scruggs wrote an entire book on mobile homes. I don't like mobile homes because I don't like things that move. But Tracy does, because she understands the cash flow benefit of it. But when you start to get to the really inexpensive properties that a lot of us start to discount as investors, going, wow, it's too small, there's not enough in it. You have to realize that people at that level are purchasing based on a budget issue, not a value issue. It's why you can buy a mobile home or for $8,000, fix it up a little bit, and sell it for $500 a month for 20 years, which ends up being $30,000 or whatever it is. It's like, well, is it worth $30,000? No, but people are buying based on budget. I'm on a fixed income. I'm on Social Security. I can afford to. I want to live where it's warm. I can afford $500 a month. That's fine. I'll pay you $500 a month, and they really don't care about. So you don't need to have a wild interest rate or anything on there that wouldn't get past an RMLO. You can still have a very decent rate. They don't care about the value as much because it's a budget issue. So that's where you can get creative on the lower ones. And like you said, you can turn around and flip a home, buy it for 8, sell it for 20, take some money out note-wise to make an investor be at 50%. Now you got your 10 back out of it. So you made 2 right up front, but then you got the back end of a note or a split of a note. And I'm talking way too fast about it, but there's just lots of directions you can go on that. I think the last thing I would say, at least about, not the last thing, but the one thing I want to mention is that, there's a lot more notes out there than people realize. So we run a trailing 2 years. Is about how far, to get data. And we use Advanced Data Services create stuff, and he pulls all the stuff, and we're able to put it together and change it into a report. But basically, so if you take 2019, which is our last full year that we've had, there was 23.9 billion, that's with a B, in seller carryback notes. So think of it this way, roughly 6% of all real estate transactions are seller carryback notes. So you think, oh, it's a small industry. Well, 6% of the real estate industry is huge, 23.9 billion. And 39% of that is residential. So, maybe you're a type of investor that like residential. 39% of that, 23.9 billion is residential. 25% of it is raw land. Another 18% of it is commercial. So if you like, you want to own, loans or buy into, notes on commercial property, that's your wheelhouse. That's a good chunk. And there's about 18% is the completely unknown. We don't know because the way it's filed and stuff, we just don't know what category it is. It would probably be fair to say the breakdown would be mostly residential, then land, then commercial, that it would continue with that trend, but we really don't know. But if you take just a trailing 5 years, if you take 2015 through 2019, That's $113.8 billion in notes out there at any one time. Now, obviously, some are being bought, some are being created, some are being sold, that kind of thing. But it's a bigger industry than I think everybody realizes. So, it's not a bad little niche.
Really, that's for sure.
On the residential side of things, if you're concerned about a licensed loan officer originating the original note, is that because it's less saleable if you're wanting to sell it later? Or does it have to do with if you have to foreclose on it, it's likely to be held up in the courts because it wasn't originated by a licensed loan officer? Because it's the person that buys a note after the fact. You're not really responsible for the origination or the parties that originated it, right?
That's true. That's true. And I will preface everything going forward that I'm not an attorney, and everything can vary from your state, and don't eat yellow snow and all that other stuff. But so my understanding of it is it's not so much that if everything was set up. The problem really comes from the buyer's perspective. If they feel they were slighted, it doesn't matter that you're the end user and you weren't part of that creation. You took assignment of that creation. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're starting to look at them going, hey, did they have an RMLO involved? If they didn't, would that person pass that test right now? So there was nothing created that wouldn't pass that test as far as debt to income ratio. So that's where everybody's being a little bit more cautious. It's not that we're going to do anything. I mean, I'm not too worried about the documents as far as that. I mean, the business operated for hundreds of years doing just fine without worrying about that. Mm-hmm. But I think everybody, definitely from a resale standpoint, it's also why you're seeing a lot of conversions from a land contract to an actual deed of trust mortgage. Because of who's actually the holder of that, even though it's just different semantics. Either way, you still owe me money, but either I never deeded it over to you like a land contract where I'm going to deed it to you at the very end, or I deeded it to you up front, but now I carried back a mortgage on it. There are different foreclosure rules depending on the states, and some are more common in some states, but we did see one organization that did a lot of land contracts or contract for deeds being converted now and actually being solicited by attorney firms and things like that, saying, "Hey, we're gonna do this for you and help you convert, and it's better for you." So that kind of makes everybody a little bit more nervous from a resale standpoint. If you do a buyer interview and they're happy and they've got value and they've got equity, it's most likely not going to be a problem. But from a resale standpoint, yeah, if you're trying to securitize and put things together in a portfolio and sell, then yeah, that could be a hot button for somebody else.
Yeah, bottom line, if you're a seller and you're going to carry back the paper, just go ahead and get a licensed loan officer to underwrite it, because
I would,
and originate it, because their cost, the borrower is paying anyway. So it's not costing you anything as the seller.
Yeah.
So just do it right.
And even if
it's not expensive.
Yeah. It's worth it for sure. Tell us about your book.
Yes, I almost forgot about it.
I want to see this, because what does Wendy think about mobile homes? They wanted to know what you thought about mobile homes.
Well, I am a huge fan of mobile homes. In fact, I have two now that are seller financed, and both of them, the prices were the same. I was all in with the rehab at 40 grand, sold both of them in the 80s, and got 20,000 down on each one. And have them seller finance. Both of them one's 2 years old, one's probably 3. And it's at 6%. It's not huge, but it doesn't suck either. Yeah. So I'm happy about that. And then just today, Billy and I, in fact, at 12 o'clock today, Billy and I just bought 2 mobile homes that we're getting ready to, brand new ones that we're getting ready to put on some land. And as we're sitting here having this conversation, we're thinking about selling them, but I thought, we should probably seller finance these.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you don't like them because they're mobile. We actually get a discount on insurance because our buyers or renters can meet the fire department halfway if there's an issue.
I don't like mobile homes. Mobile home with land, at least I know I have the land. I don't like anything that I have to go looking for. I literally had a guy try to sell me a note on a boat in Miami and he was bragging to me how fast the boat was and how it could outrun the Coast Guard. And I'm like, even the helicopters? And he's like, oh, we didn't think of that. And I'm like, I mean, so, but, well, it's funny because we're actually looking, mobile homes are going to come up with Tracy in a real hurry here, because we made an offer on a place on a lake that's a little more rural from here. And after we get done talking about the house and what we want to remodel in the house, and then maybe some offices nearby, we went and looked at some office space, the next thing out, she's like, it's a lot more rural. I could probably do some really good mobile home deals out here. I'm like, oh, really? So, but she's not wrong. She's not wrong. And when you get that mentality, it's so funny because we talked about renting an office space out there, and she just brought up a really good point this morning. She's just like, well, why don't we just buy one? And her point being is that, like, yeah, and you guys know, I mean, we've been around enough of a while to realize that when you talk about money right now, I mean, like, I don't want a mortgage on a house. I don't have one, but I'm like, it's like 2.2% money. I mean, where am I? I mean, we're literally, if you're talking about buying even commercial properties, not much more. We're literally at the only time in my life I ever remember looking at deals like where we're buying this lake house or buying a commercial building to put offices in. The interest rate is not even part of my factor of deciding whether it's a good deal anymore. You're like, oh, I'm paying this much interest. Is it better for me to do this? Because here's my interest payment, and here's how much I'm going to get. And it's not off cents on the dollar deduction, even though everybody thinks it is. But it's just like, we're literally at the point now, I don't even do the calculation. Like, there's no point. It's low. Whatever the number is, it's really low.
That's right.
I will probably spend more on coffee for my office and an espresso machine than I will for whatever the interest rate. So it really thinks your mentality right now. And I've said, we've been talking about this in our masterminds as far as saying, what you do in the next 12 months will very much position you for your next 10 to 20 years. Mm-hmm. Because we're at a window right now that with low interest rate and deals to be had and coming out of COVID and everything else like that, we get one of these windows every, whatever number of years. And this will be interesting.
I hate to do this to you, Fred. You're going to have to quickly talk about your book because I forgot to replace the battery in my camera.
I think we're talking about a marketing book, which was Be the Lime. I did this in 2015. This is the second book I think I wrote. Anyway, if you want, you can still pick it up on Amazon. It's called Be the Lime. It's really just about social media, email marketing, things like that, finding your own voice. There's been a lot of people it's helped as far as that's concerned. If that's kind of your thing, you promote yourself. If you're just sitting back and wanting to just, have everybody come to you, if you got contacts, then definitely not a big deal. The only other thing I'd say to go check out, noteinvestor.com if you want to check out some things about the note industry and stuff that Tracy and I do. But cashflowexpo.com, go register. It's free. You've got sessions here. You can see Bill and Wendy in a session. You can see myself do a very small session, warm-up session. Tracy's doing a session. We've got Jeff Woods from One Thing. If you go to it, you'll see all the speakers. Plus, you'll see a new one next week that I'm really excited about.
Got a women's panel on there too. That's going to be great.
There is a women's panel. Thank you for the plug. Yes, there's a women's panel that is on day one at the end of the day. That I do know on the schedule, so I can at least say that one. Yeah, and I actually heard the panel because I actually got to hear it when it was being done, and it's actually a really good panel. That's what I like about this event too, though, is that so many of these events, and Tracy did Wise Women Expo earlier last year at the end of the year, but so many of these events, I'm sorry, they just like bypass women as speakers. And bottom line is that, man, they're actually more smart than we are. I mean, I actually re-put my Alexa into a male voice so it wouldn't listen to me. So, there's a lot of valuable information. And yes, the women's panel is no exception. I was actually kind of cracking up in the other room listening to it. It was good.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much. And
thanks, Fred.
I didn't mean for you to rush through because you're just going to lose the picture of us, and that's okay. The session will end. You can
this
still
is
hear
my show now.
You won't be able to see us. And by the
We're
way,
always prepared.
I think Randy was asking about the schedule so he could sleep in during our session because he's heard us enough. So we've got a link to the Cashflow Expo over in the chat, and we've got all of Fred's contact information over there as well.
And there we go.
There goes the camera.
Thank you. I like my multicolored look anyway.
That's right. We're in multicolor.
And you're back.
Thank you so much. How did we come back?
I don't know.
Oh, we can. Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us, Fred. As you can tell, we're always professional as usual. We are Carolina Capital Management. If you are a borrower looking to borrow money in the Southeast, carolinahardmoney.com, click on the Apply Now button. If you are an investor looking for passive returns, here we go again. Click on the Accredited Investor tab. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I guess our show is just about done.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
See you later.
See you next week. Thanks
Thanks,
again,
guys.
Fred.